Recording started.
Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's Matrexit discussion group call for tactile sovereignty. And we have a couple group members on with us this week. And Liam is with us. He was with us the other day as well. And his son is with us, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. Very intelligent young man, and he has some questions of his own. So I guess without a whole lot of further ado, we'll get this started on this beautiful Sunday, first day of the week, not the 7th, not the Sabbath, as I've said before. And so, welcome on, Liam and Chad. How you doing, guys?
You're doing well. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for having us. Shadamir here is my offspring, my first offspring, and he has some questions for you, Shad. Do you want to jump in first?
If that's what we would like to start with, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, let's have a little discussion about your concerns and what you want Brian to touch on.
It's more about traveling to other countries from the US without, like, as you probably would, Brian, like, how would you, with your status and I don't know what kind of contracts you have with the US, but anyway, what you would go through to travel to other countries without having the full, because I believe the US needs all kinds of such, like citizenship, etc., for them to let you travel out of country without a hitch.
Yeah, Brian, let me give you a little background first. Chad is one of four that I guess I experimented with, because the experimentation was just retaining the actual birth information from either the hospital or the birthing center where they where they were born. Okay, I did not contract, meaning I did not allow the hospital or the birthing centers to send the information to the state. That being said, they don't have per se a state birth certificate, the blue certificate that you and I are familiar with, and most of your audience is familiar with. So, of course, we would have to jump through some other hoops. We do have the family Bible and the affidavit stating that he was born where he was born and when he was born and to whom he was born. So that's practically all we have. So that's the little bit of background that I can share with you.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that I would say regarding this, because I've talked to a lot of other people who didn't get the birth certificate, and I kind of relate this along the same lines as people, for instance, who I talk about revoking the voters registration. Okay, I kind of compare it to that, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I never voted, I never registered, da da da." Well, that doesn't mean there's not a registration out there, and normally you can find it. Especially if anybody, for instance, has gotten a driver's license. Normally, a lot of states automatically enroll you as a voter. Kind of a necessity of you being a representative of the state organization. You know what I mean? And just because people don't sign up for a birth certificate, I'm pretty sure there's one out there, and it just didn't get sent to you. You refuse to participate in that. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure the state still has one out there. But either way, the key thing is that it's not being used, and it's not being used as identification, which even when the birth certificate first came out, the instructions were, this is not to be used as identification, right? But we know that the Department of State, if you go to their site, they do allow use of entry in a family Bible in lieu of a birth certificate. as a document. Now, there's been people I've spoke to that have had difficulties getting a passport or whatever, and using that entry in the family Bible as is dictated by the Department of State. But that's primarily because those secretaries or whoever working within the Department of State aren't used to that. That's not the norm. The norm is everybody brings a birth certificate. So when somebody does that, when somebody brings in like the entry in the family Bible, that kind of throws them for a loop because they don't know how to deal with it. They've never done it before. You know what I mean? Even though it is right within their documentation as being legitimate to be used to achieve a passport. So you just have to kind of probably be patient with them and maybe even ask if they need to go up to another level to one of their managers or something like that. And also show them where in their documents it shows that that is an approved document in lieu of the birth certificate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. But would a passport be necessary to travel in and out of the U.S.?
Yes. I'd say yes. And you
And
know,
not using the
there's
public transportation, right? Such as airplanes.
well, it may be, depending on whether you have a driver's license or not, it may be needed also, to fly even domestically. Who knows? Depends on the carrier, I guess. But yeah, to fly in and out of the country, yeah, definitely. And even, aboard some cruise ships as well. It could be necessary depending on whether there's a driver's license or not. Like I said, what I did, the situation I did, isn't as fun or sexy or whatever as a lot of other people, but it's a whole lot more simple. It's a lot more simple than creating a new name, this and that, because they're still going to tie the new name to the old name. You know what I mean? It's still going to carry all the same baggage and be seen the same way as the original name was shown. So I just stayed with the same name because there can be a lot of Brian Glenn Parkers out there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that all of them are a state organization. They don't have to be. The Constitution says that you are supposed to be secure in your papers and your persons, plural. That means people can have more than one person, and a lot of people do. People that own different businesses and things like that, they all have DBAs in the name of those businesses. Those are all their persons in the same way. Because as you showed on a post, I think this morning, Liam, that for a person, they list, LLC, partnership, organization, association, company, corporation, multiple things.
Yeah,
Are
individual.
all seen as having, right, individual, yep. They're all seen as having the same rights as personhood, which what they needed that for, that main right that they really needed that for, was the right to sue and be sued. Because if they didn't give a company the right to be sued, then that would leave people without remedy or without recourse in a situation where harm was done.
Right, correct. Right. Now, in reference to that would include the man and woman when they are talking about the person, or are they still creating the artificial person in order to sue you? Now, you're talking about a criminal act versus a civil, perhaps. It might be different.
Right. In a case, yeah, in that case, no, they're looking at the position of somebody that is acting in the capacity of a representative of that organization that they created when you're born.
Okay. Okay, good.
And they aren't looking at you as strictly the man or strictly the woman. No, they see you as the man or the woman, but they see you as acting as a representative for that state-owned creation. And because it's a state-owned creation, that's where they get their authority over it. Now, a lot of people, maybe David Williams would say, no, you're born in the United States. Well, back during the times of, when Law of Nations was written or whatever, yeah, that would be the case. But things have changed. Everything develops. And with technology, so has personhood developed. And it's been developed into an artificial entity, which back at the time of M.R. Vertel, an artificial entity, people would be hard pressed to wrap their mind around what an artificial entity even was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Emil Vattel, meaning the author of the Law of Nations, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right, Chad, what do you think?
Does getting a passport come with any strings?
Doesn't come with any restraints. You know, I don't know. I haven't gone that route as of yet, anyway. So I haven't looked at what liabilities necessarily would come with it. I would say that any liabilities that would come with the passport would be the same that would come with anyone who has U.S. citizenship or dual citizenship with the United States, which means that there may be some protections that come along with it. If you're overseas, you could possibly get some protections from the USA. But there's also, you know, when I say liability always sounds like a bad word, but liabilities also equates to the term duties and responsibilities. And that's just basically upholding common law.
So it's just keeping up your end of the contract.
Correct. Because I hear a lot of people, talk about their rights. I'll hear somebody go for an hour talking about your rights and, oh, you got to stand on your rights. And if you don't stand on your rights, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. And they'll talk for an hour about rights, but they never once mention duty or responsibility. Well, if you crack a book and start learning about rights, you'll see that rights is always joined at the hip with duty and responsibility. One does not exist without the other.
I see.
And that's one of the reasons why I say that when people talk about their rights coming from God, like, okay, that sounds good. Point to me where it is, say, in Scripture, where are your rights at if your rights come from God? To me, it's very simple. When you realize that when you're reading anything, say, legal or lawful, whatever you want to use for a term, that you have to read things forwards and backwards. You have to see both sides of the coin. Because you can't have one side of the coin without the other side of the coin. For instance, if you look at the contract clause in the Constitution, it says that no state shall impede the obligation of a contract, right? Well, this pretty much is saying that you have the right to contract with who you want. Well, the other side of the coin says not only if you have the right to contract with whoever you want, but you also can deny contract to whoever you want. You have the right on both ends, either to agree to contract or to not agree to contract. And when it comes to, say, for instance, your rights coming from God or from Scripture, I would simply point to the Ten Commandments. You have to look at those the same way. And one of the main commandments in the Ten Commandments is do not steal. Well, guess what? There's a flip side to that. If you have the right to be protected so that nobody steals from you, then you also have the duty to have no one steal from you as well. So you're protected on that end. Not only are you not to steal, but nobody's supposed to steal from you. Not only are you not to commit adultery, but also your wife is to, or husband is not to commit adultery against you. All of those commandments work the same way. Honor your father and mother. Good. That also means you deserve the honor of your father and mother as well. It's not all one-sided. All laws are two-sided.
It's looking at the contract through the eyes of both parties.
Right. Unless it's strictly a unilateral contract, a one-sided take it or leave it contract,
right?
Then there is duty and responsibility of both parties involved.
Okay. And would you know where I would be able to find some of the where would I be able to read about what I would be signing myself into getting a passport? Like, the duties, the rights, etc.? Where would I be able to find that?
I don't think those are really spelled out. They don't spell out necessarily duties and responsibilities or obligations. Sometimes they will with obligations, but they won't spell out the benefits maybe coming from the state regarding getting a passport. A lot of that takes a little bit of research. For instance, looking into, okay, if you're signing a contract, what type of contract are you signing into? And you take whatever type of contract that is and pop open like a Merriam-Webster's legal dictionary and look that type of contract up and see how that type of contract works. Because there's multiple types of contract out there. There's not just one kind. And in the same way, not all contracts also require signatures from both parties. And I think one of the worst aspects that we live in is that so many of the contracts that we get involved with are based on a trust relationship. Well, with trusts are not obligated to divulge full disclosure on things. So you're not going to find out necessarily. And those are kind of that take it and leave it contract, you know?
Okay. And
Yeah, go ahead, Shad.
what would
No,
there
I
be
was
any
just gonna. Go ahead, Shad. I'm sorry.
Would you be able to use a passport, a US passport, to, say, for example, travel from Dominican Republic to Russia, for example? Would I be able to do that with a US passport without any consequence?
Sure. Yeah. That would just be part of your itinerary. I mean, a lot of people, for instance, you go on a cruise, right? And maybe use a passport. Depending on where you're going, you don't always need a passport on a cruise. Like if you're going to the Bahamas or whatever, I don't think you need one. But some other countries you're going to, you may need one. But there might be multiple stops, for instance, on a cruise, and they may bounce from one country to another. And yeah, the passport is still legitimate throughout those countries, basically because they're going to countries where the U.S. has agreed, they have a contractual agreement with those countries to honor each other's documents. And that pretty much makes up the majority of countries.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's only countries or nations that have agreed to honor the contract of passports with the U.S.
And the majority of the countries that are all member states of the United Nations, the majority of them have all made this agreement amongst each other to honor each other's documents. Much the same way as Ohio honors the documents of Arizona, and they honor the documents of New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that information there specifically, that can be found in the driver's license contract. If you look up the driver's license contract, that's available to be found online.
Okay, I'll look into that.
And with the driver's license contract, I think there's only like maybe 3 or 4 states that didn't sign on to it. But because they didn't sign on to it, doesn't mean they didn't honor it. Which that's something that's kind of hard for some people to wrap their mind around. I think the best way to explain that would be to, if you were to look, for instance, at the power of taxation, right? And a lot of people will say, oh, it was never passed. You know, that amendment was never passed. Well, sure, it may not have been specifically agreed to by all the states, but all the states still use it, and they still respect it and honor, what is that, Title 16 of the code. So just because they didn't literally sign on or whatever, it's still just as much subject and enforcement because of the reason that it is being enforced and used.
Mm-hmm. Right. May I ask you something in reference to driver's license? Because this is something that I touched on here with the family. Something that I am experimenting is the international driving permit. Do you have any experience with that, Brian, by any chance?
Yeah, I see a lot of people use it, and I see a lot of people go to jail using it as well, because the international driver's license isn't what it sounds like. The international driver's license is just documentation that is supplied in multiple languages that is supposed to accompany a regular driver's license. It's not in place of or in lieu of or anything like that. It's a document that is supposed to accompany your regular driver's license. That way, if you were in, now say, not all countries require driver's licenses, by the way. Some don't. But if you were in a country that required a driver's license, and say you were running a car or using a vehicle there, something happened, you got pulled over, and here you're showing them a foreign driver's license, that's going to be, I mean, you're giving them something that's in a different language, you're confusing them. So because of that, you accompany it with the international driver's license, which it kind of it acts as, I want to say a mediator, but an interpreter, put it that way. The international driver's license acts as an interpreter between, say, the American driver's license and, say, if you were in Japan, for instance.
Okay.
Is it like a third party?
In a way, but it's basically just being used essentially as a mediator or as an interpreter. It's not a separate contract or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Well, let's
it's
see.
a supplement.
Okay. Well, let's see. I have. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just supplementary to a valid driver's license. And I would say driver's license in air quotes because technically, I know in the state of Florida, there is really no such thing as a driver's license anymore. They've removed that word driver from it. And essentially, it's just a license. And I think this is a slow morph into a federal ID. And I know I've seen a lot of discussion that the ultimate goal really is just to morph the driver's license into a federal ID, and then the federal ID into just basically a passport, to eventually to where you will end up carrying, everybody will end up carrying basically the same as a passport card.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think the people that are using international driver's license or the permit, I think the issue that they're having is that they don't have they're stateless. They don't have, they're producing these documents, but they are not backing it up. In other words, a state, they have not created a state per se, per the Law of Nations preliminaries section 1, that binding contract that people create as a society, just like the 56 founding fathers of the United States created this, this state in the British colonies. I think that could be the reason why people are getting in trouble with the IDP, because they don't have, they're just acting like islands per se, for instance. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I'll tell you what, the past 3 years, I've been kind of stepping away from that idea of statelessness and it being a negative, because I think that we have evidence of what country that we are from, you know what I mean, where we originate from, and that this whole stateless story, to me is, I don't know, that to me that's just kind of some fluff that's thrown out there that really doesn't hold a lot of weight. And a lot of people throw it around, but there's nothing really to back it up. I've never seen a court case that was referencing somebody in a stateless situation.
Correct, which is the reason why some individuals utilizing the IDP, the International Driver Permit, are getting into trouble because there still is the presumption that they are part, for instance, they're part of the United States, so they shouldn't be utilizing something international like that. In other words, it states right here that the International Driving Permit, it's created through convention, the Vienna and the Geneva Conventions. Okay, but it has to be through a state that um, um, has signed up to those treaties. You see, that have actually
Right.
filed ascension documents. Um, in this instance, I did do that about 10 years ago with the State Society of Christopher Nation. I sent those ascension letters to the UN. Those two, the 1949 Geneva Convention and the 1968 Vienna Convention on International Driving Permit. And I did create those permits utilizing our society for the law of nations. That might be a little different than what perhaps some of the individuals that you have that you're mentioning uh, went to jail for.
Well, it could be, but I mean, there's also a question of whether that nation is a recognized nation by the United Nations or not. The United Nations recognizes, I think, 193 countries, something like that. But
Mm-hmm. There's some law, public law, the United States public law, I believe, is the law protecting public ministers. It states in there that public ministers, and I think we talked about this the last time, briefly. Public ministers are protected irrespective of the United States recognizing them or their country of origin or their state association. I'm trying not
right,
to call
and
it. I'm trying not to call it political status. But yeah, go ahead.
right, yeah. Myself, I wouldn't refer to it as public minister. I would just say minister, and I think that's still found in enforcement through General Orders 100, the Labor Code. If you look at Article 53 of the Labor Code, because it states there that ministers are not supposed to be seen as POWs,
Yeah,
and should be released, unless they stay or choose to stay back and minister to the people that are being held.
Yes.
Other than that, they're kind of supposed to be hands off, and I've kind of noticed that also with watching things going on within the court system, for instance, and always keeping an eye out to see if there's actually a priest or a minister or a pastor or whatever involved, and if they are, what types of things do those people get involved in? Because it seems to be much different than others.
Sure. Yeah, it says Article 53, enemies, chaplains, officers of medical staff, hospital nurses and servants, if they fall into hands of the American Army, are not prisoners of war unless the commander has reasons to retain them, the commander of the American forces. Yeah. So it's not just
Yes.
Yeah, practically non-combatant individuals. Of
Exactly.
course, there is the question whether a combatant can hold or a non-combatant can be seen with a weapon. I guess that would be the question then, if they're combatants or not. But anyway, that's a question for some other time. Go ahead, Shad. Thank you.
Why are you passing it over to me?
No worries, no worries. All right, so the thing about Shadamir here is that we're trying to implement something for him because he's reaching the age of I guess his maturity and he wants to proceed on to traveling. And that's why I'm touching base with the IDP, the International Drivers Permit that that we uh, that we um, that we created for our state. It's I firmly believe that I have not yet been stopped or anything like that. But if I do, that would be a document that I would present along with the ministerial documents and, of course, the insurance that I have to claim a financial responsibility. But I also want him to perhaps go our route, which is to acquire the documentations or the contracts that we have with Florida, with the state of Florida, to be more specific, and then proceed on to rescinding any presumptions in law of representing the creation or the artificial entity. So I think we're going to proceed with both options, but
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about that because I was wondering whether ID is really something that I'm going to be needing to travel by car other than insurance, because I believe, to my knowledge, insurance is something that's going to be needed, but is ID as necessary as insurance?
right. The
Yeah,
idea
insurance is required. Yeah, it's insurance required. Really, that falls under the Financial Responsibility Act. I would read that, kind of wrap your head around. But yeah, there is ID that's needed. I'm just saying, when I started researching all this and paying attention, like watching all these traffic stops and stuff, all these videos, and as painful as that is, paying attention to what it was that was really important and what, the law enforcement was really paying attention to, and what rang true with what they paid attention to there as compared to other situations as well, and find, what was really in common. And to me, what was really in common was that what the people were using. Now, I'll say that, there is a big group out there that have this whole thing, they say lose the legal name and all that, Well, they're half correct, but mostly incorrect. I don't think the problem is in using the legal name. The problem is in whose name is that? Who established that name? Are you using a name that the state established, or using a name that you established? Or let me say it this way. Are you using a person that the state established, or are you using the person that you established? And they make it very easy for people to establish their person. It wouldn't be protected in the amendments in the Bill of Rights if it wasn't a possibility. And like I say, people are out there establishing persons all the time. And they're doing it with, for instance, the most common thing we see is businesses that they open. The name of that business becomes a person. And people are seeing, for instance, I noticed this in looking at the Internal Revenue Code, the IRC, that filers, or just common citizens, or whatever you want to call them, are all seen as a sole proprietor. And a sole proprietor is a man or woman that has a claim to a business, and they're the only ones that operate within that claim to that business. Okay? And so that is essentially really kind of the commercial way of the natural person existing. And they see everybody as acting in a representative capacity. So the question is, who are you representing? Whose person are you representing? So my recommendation is that you establish your person, and that is the person that you operate with. And at the same time, like you said earlier, Liam, you also notify the state that that is what you're doing and that you are not operating in the capacity of a representative for any state-created organization, association, or individual.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So we have some
So
more.
I think this is good because I think we're ironing out some of the little details that go along with these things. Because to me, they're details, but they're not that complicated. They're really pretty simple. That's why I said, they're simple. They're not sexy and as fun as doing a lot of these other things. But a lot of these other things people are doing isn't creating the change that they're looking for.
Right.
You can, throw away. Originally, I saw people celebrating that they were burning their birth certificate and their driver's license. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't mean that your person or your organization doesn't still exist in their files. They arrest you, they're going to fingerprint you, and they're still going to tie you to that organization or to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter whether you burn it or not.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. So, I'm going back to the IDP, the International Driver's Permit. Apparently, it's something that you can get through a different company altogether. It's let's see, the Carnet de Passager Indenu. Sounds French to me. So apparently, those instruments you can get through what is called a CPD organization. It's practically an automobile association, just like I guess it would be like the rifle, the American Rifle Association of sorts. Very interesting. But yes, going back to the.
Well, I was going to say that's just like another offshoot from, say, your DMV or the BMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, because that association is also part of a bigger association called the AAMVA.
Oh, really?
Right? And I'm sure the AAMVA, they're the parent company to all the DMVs and BMVs. And I'm sure the AAMVA are the ones that act in concert or in contract with the people that supply the IDP, the International Driver's Permit.
Right.
Which to me is a horrible name because it's not a permit in itself. And it makes it sound like it's something that it's not. It's just something that is supposed to accompany an already established driver's license from whatever state. It's not a standalone document.
Yeah, that is interesting because right there in the International Driving Permit that I am on, the internationaldrivingpermit.org. So it's not even, this one is not even a governmental agency stating all of this information. So practically it says, yes, in many cases, you will need an IDP to drive in a foreign country other than the country where you are a resident in.
Right.
So it says, it states some details, like it depends on bilateral agreements and treaties between the countries where you are a resident in and where you're traveling to. But it doesn't really specify whether it's the only thing that you need or if it's an accompanying document. So this is a little sketchy.
Yeah, I've looked into it deeply. I looked into that very deeply a number of years ago. And it's just it's a secondary document. And, like you said, they're not a government organization. And that's very correct. Just like your Department of Motor Vehicles is not a government organization, or your Bureau of Motor Vehicles is not a government organization. Those are all independent associations, organizations to themselves. And I know when I looked into Department of Motor Vehicles for the state of Florida, I was looking at, for instance, how much a driver's license cost and how much money went to the DMV compared to how much went to the state.
Wow.
Or how much a registration cost and how much money went to the state. And only a very nominal amount actually went to the state. I think for the driver's license at the time, it was like $4 is all that the state got out of it. But what that is, that little nominal amount that they get out of a registration or a driver's license And that nominal amount that they get is called consideration, all right, which is part of their contract with the state. And through that consideration, through them getting a little bit of a benefit, say, for instance, from the registration, means that then the state will go and enforce the bylaws or rules or whatever of the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Onto the fiction, onto the artificial entity.
Well, no, onto the man or woman who's acting as a representative for the artificial entity or the organization.
Unless
Correct.
of course you rescind that position.
Correct. And I think that with me, that's where a little bit of a twist came to things, because after I did that, things that should have been on my record, on the driving record, disappeared. It became blank. Okay. And also at the same time, never in the past, whenever I've been pulled over through my life, was I ever pulled over without a ticket. Now all of a sudden, there was no more tickets. No more tickets were being issued anymore. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting. And it's not just a one-off or a two-off situation. There's been a good half a dozen times. For instance, I've been pulled over multiple times where they claim there was no driver's license, no registration, no insurance. Was I ticketed for any of those and taken to jail? No. None of those was there ever any ticket written for? And no, I was not taken to jail. Which, anywhere in the country that I knew of, that is go directly to jail, don't pass go, do not collect $200. You know what I mean? The first time it happened, I thought, oh boy, we're going to see what's going to happen now. And the officer was like, you know what? You be safe. Have a good night. And I was like shocked. And when it happened about 6-8 months later, again, I was shocked. So I was like, yeah, something definitely happened within the situation here. Because who can they write a ticket to? They can only write a ticket to somebody who's acting in the representative capacity for that state-created person.
Correct.
And I rescinded that position. So now they're in a little bit of a bind, especially because if they were to write the ticket, well, what happens then if I want to fight the ticket? Am I going to come into court? Do they want me coming into court and bringing this information forward in front of the gallery? Of course, they hold you to the end. Or in one situation, I had them actually send me to an empty courtroom, and they took care of a situation in an empty courtroom.
That is funny. That's funny because that's where we ended up for this issue that we had here with the county. Incidentally, I think I mentioned before in the last conversation, but I mentioned it again because that last audio was a little kind of iffy. Is that as soon as we file all of this paperwork that we have already sent to the Secretary of State, rescinding the representation of the artificial entity and everything else, the deputies were the ones that dropped. Practically, they returned the paperwork to the clerk, and they practically said that it was just returned. And you know what that means? A return warrant is practically unenforceable. They're practically saying we can't enforce this. Here, send it back. We were returning it, and that happened.
Correct.
That happened before anything else that we did took place, and we have evidence. This is actually evidence. It's evidence in the public record that this is exactly what happened, and it's very fascinating because one of the deputies that came over to serve the warrant, he usually what they do is that they just pin it to the gate or pin it to the door or whatever, if no one is there, but he didn't even want to approach the gate, which is very fascinating. And he literally put that in the record in his notes, which is also fascinating, which is more power and more evidence for us to utilize that this, of what really happened, and how our position is a position of strength over what it is that they were attempting to do.
Hey, Liam, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo.
Are you hearing echo from me?
Yes.
Okay. Was it mangled, or was it bad? Too bad?
Just like you're talking over yourself.
Oh.
Let's see what's happening here.
I'm not getting an echo.
Well, hopefully it's only me hearing it. Well, we can continue.
Okay. Let me try something over here.
Well, I called in, and I think it ended my call and brought me in online.
Yeah, I'm trying a headset, but it's not working for me. I was trying to speak through the headset, and it's not working. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. There was something that I wanted to bring up in reference to the driver's license. And that is, can you do me a favor? And if you do get in trouble for this, I can travel all the way down there and get you out of jail if you attempt this. Can you say, hey, deputy, can you show me what it is that you saw on there on your computer? Can you do that? I'm pretty sure that they won't allow you to, but seeing how they know who you are now, you never really know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure that they're not going to let you see anything.
That's a shame.
And I'm not overly worried about it, but
yeah, because I've been thinking, just to ask, because you never really know. Hey, can you give me a tour of your patrol or something like that, and show me what it is that you have there on the record? I guess not. I guess it's would be too much to ask and whatnot. But have you been tempted to ask them what it is that they saw on their screen at all?
no, I haven't.
No, you just okay, all right.
I haven't. I've just known that. All right, there's been multiple situations, okay, where say somebody else was involved. It didn't have to do with me, but that individual wanted some help from me regarding the situation. Like, can Brian take care of my property while I'm in jail? Da da da. And they contacted me, and I actually heard them tell them. They said, "Listen, anything Brian wants, Brian can have."
Okay.
And I found that very fascinating.
Wow, that is quite impressive. Well, I guess we'll be go ahead and doing this.
Who said that?
Yeah, who told you that?
People from the sheriff's department.
Really? Wow. Fascinating. That is fascinating. Well, I guess there's no trouble whatsoever acting as what is our position if I meant to ask you this before. What is our position if not representative of that artificial entity? Are we beneficiaries do we even care? What would be our position? I'm kind of curious what our position would be if we have rescinded the position of representative of the artificial entity.
Well, if you're resigning as agent for their organization, you've got to be representing something within their system, something recognizable or whatever. So what you're representing is the person you created. Like I said, this is where things get thrown for a little bit of a loop with them, though, because what happens when somebody's born? When somebody's born, they take the name mom and dad mentioned, and they create an organization in that name, right?
Yes.
Well, they don't want to admit or confess necessarily, although judges do know it. They don't want to necessarily admit or confess that, yeah, that's what they did. So
Right.
it's like, okay, cool. I'll do this. I'll do the same thing. I'll create an organization in that same name, and I'm representing that organization I created. Now that's kind of a double pickle for them to be in.
Yeah.
How are we going to argue this situation? You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
why I said, I haven't been too worried about like getting a ticket or anything like that, because they don't want to be placed into that position. I could fully understand why. I wouldn't want to either if I was them. But at the same time, this doesn't mean that you get to run around out there and do whatever the heck you want to do because, I'm Superman or I'm invincible now. No, you're not invincible. If you commit a common law crime, you know what? You're going to be held accountable for it. Bottom line. So.
No, but it gives you a sense of more responsibility. Actually, if you're smart, at least it does to me. I have more responsibility now, so I have to be more careful. Not because I don't want to get caught, but because I have a different sense of what we talked before, a different sense of a duty.
Exactly. You got a different sense of duty. You got a different sense of being in honor. And I'll tell you what, ask anybody, for instance, who has ever gone and taken a CCW course, a concealed carry course for a weapon. And after taking that course, they walk away with a different sense of responsibility than what they had when they first walked in to take that course.
Yes.
Now, they're now seeing things in a little bit different light, and they're feeling a little more duty to their fellow man.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. It does. I think it happens with any level of education, even self-education, learning new words, learning new procedures, new skills, etc. But yes, that definitely does make a lot of sense. Yes, definitely, indeed. The I guess the only issue is not really knowing, but I really appreciate you actually going out there like a courageous individual and actually testing all of this for us, because otherwise we would be lost. To be honest with you, we would be lost going from one method to another, and it would just be chaos. I mean, the reason why I'm following what you're doing is because of your character, and also because everything that you seem to do is in honor. You still respect the state of Florida, for instance. That state and whatever they produce, you still respect it, but you have a different way of carrying yourself, which is what attracted me to what you were doing, and everything that you put out there made a lot of sense to me. It did. Now, I do have a particular question in reference to the names, because this is something that I've seen in many groups, and that is the copywriting of the name. Not that it's necessary, because I believe, what is it, the fourth Bill of Right protects the person, isn't it? It's the fourth Bill of Right that protects the persons on your papers. So, but I've actually seen that copyright symbol that is truly not necessary to have it and have it visually displayed anywhere. Correct, Brian?
Right. And here's one of the things people don't really comprehend is that copyrights are good for just a small handful of things. They're good for works of art. They're good for, like music, sculptures, things like that. And I did a copyright on not the name, because you cannot copyright the name. There's people left and right, they'll say, oh, yes, you can. No, you can't. You can't copyright the name. But you can copyright the signature or autograph, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. You can copyright it as a work of art. And it's nothing more, to me, it's nothing more but maybe some type of maybe estoppel or something like that. And I thought back to when these secretaries that were working in real estate were talking about sitting at a desk with a stack of mortgages, signing names to them. The robo signing that you heard of? Well, if you came across a name that had that copyright symbol after it, I might think twice if I'm going to copy that to something else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And at the same time, in documentation, when I sent my documentation to the state, I made mention in there that any signature or autograph of mine without that symbol, I was not going to stand on. I wouldn't stand behind signing that document. That the only things that I had good evidence and full disclosure on, I was going to put the copyright symbol after the name. That was going to be my only legitimate autograph or signature, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. You can listen to BB Bacchus. She was cornered by Chris Rice on his show about what's the difference between a signature and an autograph. And she went on and on for about 10, 15 minutes, and she couldn't explain it because there is no difference. The only difference I've ever really seen is that a signature may be more legible than an autograph is. That's the only difference I've ever seen. But
okay.
And you take a look. Just take a look at the etymology of the words. Signature. It's a sign of nature. Okay, or an autograph. It's autograph. It is the auto. It's you who has done it. It's not been done by somebody else. Kind of like the difference between a biography and an autobiography.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That's a little confusing because I'm going to touch on Gold. What was his name? The guy with the Matrix language. Russell Gold.
Russell J. Gould.
Yeah, Gould. Okay, yeah, and the other gentleman, Matthew Miller. They were really big about autographs, and if you remember,
David Miller. That was David Wynn Miller.
Was it David Wynn Miller? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
David Wynn Miller, and then his offspring, basically. Well, the guy that learned stuff from him was Russell J. Gould.
Right. Yeah, he's mentee. Right there.
And then you got Mark Christensen or whatever his name is over in London. He ran with that material too.
Yeah, there are quite a few. There's another gentleman teaching it online somewhere. I think he inquires. I think it's like $100 or so per session. But anyway, so they're autographed. They're major advocates of autographs with the common name dash name colon and then a period at the end. Would you consider that a work of art? Because it's to me, it's just, well, I don't really know. What do you think?
Yeah, that in a way could be considered a work of art. But I will say this, because David Wynn Miller and Russell Gould are big on the laws of grammar, right? That's one of their huge things.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the laws of grammar when it comes to a name, the full colon is not recognized in a name. The only punctuation recognized in a name is the hyphen. So I
Right.
guess
Yeah.
somehow they decided to ignore that rule. I don't know.
Well, I remember him stating that the colon means two things. It means for the and of the. That's what it stands for. So it's for the David Wynn Miller of the Miller family. Or, for instance, in your case, it would be for the Brian of the Parker family. Period. That's what it would mean.
Well, it's I use Brian Glenn, okay, and the hyphen connects those two words together. All right.
Right. Yeah.
So it's no longer like a first and last name or a first and second name or middle name. It's
Right.
the same. Connects those two words together. And then you've got the colon, which is a full stop, then the surname. But like I said, however, in the laws of names and in the laws of grammar, that those two dots, that colon, is not recognized
Yeah.
as anything. It doesn't
Right.
mean crap to them. And I've not seen them produce any court case where the courts came out and said, oh, yeah, their use of the correct grammar and all of this stuff has changed the outcome of a court case. No, it's not affected anything. It's not done anything for anybody. So
No. It doesn't.
I spent some time on that, and every now and then I'll go and relook at it. There's something new that comes out about it, but I've not found anything that carries any weight regarding what they call their quantum grammar.
Right. The quantum grammar. Yeah. The colon is something that he probably picked up out of the Western Dictionary, if I remember correctly, in one of the because I watched them. It seemed very, very interesting, the arguments that he made. But of course, he made a lot of claims. I'm talking about David. David made a lot of claims that were just outrageous, and I couldn't find any evidence that would support his claims at all. I mean, outrageous claims. Anyway, so I just wanted to touch on that.
Well, and that's the thing. We see a lot of claims out there. A lot of people make a lot of claims. Anna von Reitz, she's the best. Makes all sorts of claims. But
Yes.
does she ever show any evidence where her resource material is? Or no, she's just dreaming this stuff up out of her head, out of her old crazy head.
Yeah,
And even when I cornered her on some information that she had put out, flat out, she told me, this is conversation between her and I. She said, I don't know. She says, I just copy and paste. And I thought, oh, okay, you're a copy and paste queen. All right. Well, I copy and paste stuff as well online, but I also show my resources.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for actually noting that the quote that I found and tried to attach to that case. I think it was the penhandle
Right.
case. Yeah, thank you for that. I found
It
that
was,
in the
it was a pen hollow.
yeah. Now I want to touch back on the matter of the driver's license briefly here, and bring up God and the Bible in reference to that, because I think in a way it's, as a Christian, I guess, people want to do the right thing sometimes, and so the question is, I guess I think I brought it up the last time as well. It was in reference to pay to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's, and so the driver's license is still an instrument of the state. Should I feel disgusted for using that document, even though it's a false God's instrument?
I don't look at it as a false god or an idol or anything like that.
No, it's just a plain, simple document that stipulates certain things, certain guidelines, etc., that you should follow, etc.
Right. And, it separates one Bill Smith from another Bill Smith running around out there. That's all it really does.
Okay. Yeah. And I think then rescinding the representative's position, I think it kind of liberates you psychologically and spiritually as well. Did it do that for you, particularly spiritually?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes to one of the things that I say that I'll tell you, I don't think I've heard anybody else say it when it comes to like status correction and all that kind of stuff, whatever people want to call it. Personally, I call it correcting the presumption. All right,
Right.
because they presume that you're acting as an agent or representative for their creation. It's called presumption of law. You'll hear that word presumption of law, that term used all the time. But the way I looked at it from a spiritual level, that if and when that day comes, that you're standing in front of, the great white throne or whatever you want to call it, and the God of old, the Ancient of Days, says to you, how come you were participating in this BS?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are people going to say? What do you have to say? Well, if I feel that I have done everything I can to still exist in this life without my full agreement, then I've done everything I can do. Bottom line. Whereas, how many people would be able to say that? Well, what would I say if I did come aware of the situation? I mean,
Right.
in law, this is called the doctrine of latches. Okay, the doctrine of latches says that when you have seen something occur that has harmed you, you have X amount of time to do something about it. If not, you've accepted it. Well, when I came across what I saw or what I felt was as harm being done, I did everything I could do to correct it, which would be following that doctrinal latches. So they can't say, hey, you sat on this for 10 years and didn't do anything about it. Now that you get busted for something, now you're going to complain? No, it's too late now. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Is that applicable to them as well? For instance, let's say that I tell them what I'm doing, and what I'm doing may not be in line with their presumptions or even ordinances or laws. Well, never mind the laws or ordinances. It might not be in line with their presumptions. If they don't object, and I say, well, if they don't object, well, it's still applicable to them, isn't it? It's still
Yeah,
the content.
yeah, I would say it's applicable to them, but I think when it comes down to what they will accept as being applicable to them and what's not applicable to them, they're going to do whatever's convenient for them.
That's true. That's true. They may even throw statutes and ordinances at you,
Right.
or not at
Which,
you, but
in my,
yeah, go ahead.
which I was going to say, in my situation, I can say, hey, I resigned as agent. And since then, this has been the results of these interactions that I've had with you, and you guys have laid off. So you can't
Right.
come now to me and start saying something. No, you had plenty of time, plenty of opportunities, but you didn't.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. Which brings me to something very interesting that I just realized over the past few days. Um, uh, one of the buildings here, I think I may have told you this. One of the buildings here, I built it without permits, and they supposedly came and attached something to the gate, and of course, it was a red tape. The one that I'm talking about is a violation on unpermitted buildings. They attached it to the gate, and what I did in return is that I taped an abatement on to their notice, but I also sent it to them. Um, and and after I did that, I never heard anything from them again. However, they did put the violation on their database. Okay. Now, because I've been trying to sell this property for the past 5 months or so, of course, it has shown up. Something has shown up on the public record, And so I've had some difficulty doing that. So what I ended up doing again just recently is sending the administrative agency responsible for the violations an abatement. And of course, I included in there that I've been trying to sell, and as you know, we have the right to sell our property, correct? Uh,
Right.
so, and I told him, well, you're interfering, by the way. You have interfered 8 times so far in my attempt to sell this property. And it's been 4 years. You have not come after me. You have not placed a lien anywhere. You have not demanded any payments from me. Okay. Well, I defaulted them after the initial notice. I sent a first notice of default, and with the default, I put an arbitration clause in there, just in case, because I also sent them an offer, okay, in the form of a check. I sent them a $4 check to cure the matter, to practically to settle the matter. Okay. That happened about, I would probably say about 20 days ago. I went into their database, which is where I would find the violation. Well, the database has been sponged. I mean, the account has been
Cool.
sponged. There's nothing there anymore.
Cool.
No notices, no follow-ups, because there was a follow-up back in 2023. Now, the whole issue started in 2020, but there was an update, and the notes were there of the update from 2023. All of it is gone. There's nothing.
Liam, when you said you attach a check, was that a personal check?
It was a personal check, and I put in the memo that it was an offer, an acceptance notice.
All right. And so they cashed the check?
No, they have not.
No, they haven't cashed it?
They have not cashed it, but they haven't sent it back either. What I'm going to do here within the next few days, because it's time to send another notice of default, is that I'm going to include a money order this time. Now,
Well, if they've erased that from their database, then why bother doing anything more?
Well, I suppose, but I'll tell you.
Yeah,
what.
if you've gotten the result you were looking for, so leave it alone.
I suppose, but there is the matter of the notice, because the notice is still in public record, and the notice is the order from their administrative tribunal, whatever it is that they held it with what they call the construction board, which is a commission of 3 or 4 individuals from different departments. And they held that, and they invited me, but they didn't want me to attend. They literally told me, well, you cannot attend because you need to be represented by an attorney. Okay, well, fine. Here, I'm just going to send you an abatement. You present that to the board. Let's go with that. And we went with that. I didn't attend, so whatever. But I did send them the abatement, physical abatement to them about 3 times, because it was in the format of an abatement. Notice 1, 2, 3, and then the default, which I sent to them. Anyway, I guess not. I guess all I can probably do is just give her a call and ask her, hey, listen, I'm checking your database. What happened to your notices up there, please? Do you mind telling me? Because I know who to contact. I might do that. I might not do that. I don't know.
Why would you do
Personally,
that?
I wouldn't even do that.
You wouldn't even do
You've
that?
gotten what you were looking for, so no.
Well,
I mean, with like the things that I've done, my issue was that at the time, here a few years ago, I was coming home from work at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, so I'd look like low-hanging fruit out on the road, right? At that time of night, everybody was either going to or coming from a party, right? Well, I was coming home from work, you know what I mean? And an average of 3 times a month at night, I'd get pulled over for some sort of BS, you know what I mean? They were just fishing, you know?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I was getting tired of it. So I was looking, gosh, is there anything anybody can do? And that's what led me on this path. Now that I've gotten to the position where I'm left alone, I'm like, guess what? I'm not doing anything else. I'm satisfied with what's in place. It's accomplished what I wanted, so there's no reason to freaking, poke the bear. You know what I'm saying?
I love that. So that's the reason I've been meaning to ask you, but I've been forgetting. Why did you get stuff so much, and I didn't put one on one together? It's because it was very late at night or very early in the morning. I got it.
Yep.
Now,
And down here in Southwest Florida, this is all retirement people for the most part. It's getting to be not quite as much that way anymore, but in the past, it's always been retirement. And so it's like a lot of the businesses all close up at 8, 9 o'clock at night. They roll up the sidewalks, you know what I mean? So there's not much of a reason for anybody to be on the road at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, unless they're going to or going back from a party or something.
Right, of course. Yeah, they want to make sure that individuals are not high or under the influence and might create problems or damage someone or, Lord forbid, kill someone. I get it. Yes, of course.
Yeah, they want to preserve the public safety.
Of course, supposedly. Or make sure that there's no damage to their property. Equitable property, that is.
And especially if maybe they can profit from it. Of course, we know money is always at the heart of everything. That love of money.
Indeed.
Isn't there something like a quota in reference to tickets?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of them say there is no quota, but then I've heard people who are related to officers say, oh, yes, there is a quota. And anybody that is on the road with a routine schedule on the road can always see that last week of the month, you see a whole lot more people pulled over than you do the first week of the month. So you can't tell me there's not a quota out there, or if nothing else, that they want to have some stuff under their belt, to aid them in a future promotion or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know it's a business. And what's the job of every business? To make money. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to make money if they don't pull you over.
Yeah, that's true.
That reminds me of I don't know if I believe it's construction companies, I'm not sure, but they have to spend a certain amount of money or they're not going to get as much funding next time.
Right. That happens with all the contracting, with especially in U.S. government. And when I say contracting, I'm talking about right down to like Department of Children and Families. They're allowed X amount of money, and if that all doesn't get spent this year, then next year they're not going to get that same amount. They may get less, but if they spend it all, they can ask for that same amount. And guess what? Plus, we need a little bit more. We didn't quite have enough last year, so they can get extra. And unfortunately, that's just a bad way they've set the system up.
Right. Yeah. You asked me. Do we have some more time, Brian?
Where are we at? We're pushing an hour and a half here. If you've got more questions or whatever, why don't you just write them down? And I'm sure within the next week you'll think of some more stuff. And next Sunday we could do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm going to touch on the base of. I want to touch base on more on what you are posting, which is religion and things of that nature, and how it relates to what we're doing. To be free and to exercise. I also want to bring up the right of self-determination and how it can possibly fall under the right of freedom of religion, because
right.
Because it could. I mean, it should, because everybody is ruled by something, and like you said the last time, you accepted being ruled by your family Bible, that code. So, okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Everybody's going to fall under somebody's law, and when it comes to the right of self-determination, I've got information regarding that you probably haven't ever heard anybody say before, so that could be a fun discussion.
Oh my goodness! Now you're gonna make me wait. Okay, great.
I
All
would
right,
just
brother.
Fair enough.
do we
Fair
not have
enough.
another
Right.
one?
So, what do you think next?
Thank you.
Next Thursday, perhaps.
Said next Thursday. We could do
Next Thursday
Thursday,
or sooner.
I guess.
You just let me know.
Yeah, probably not sooner, probably, but yeah, we could do Thursday, or like I said, or even Sunday. But either way,
You let me know.
thank you, gentlemen.
So just to
Very good.
review, the very minimum I would need to travel inside the US would be insurance. Like the very minimum.
With a vehicle, I would recommend that, but you know what? I really don't see any problem with getting a driver's license. And I'll tell you what, let me add this. The people that I've seen yell the most about having a driver's license are people, and this is going to sting some people, but it's people who have either had it taken away because they're an alcoholic or a drug user or too many tickets. Or, this is the one thing, though, that does tick me off, people that owe child support. I think there is absolutely no reason whatsoever that anybody should lose a license because of child support. I think that is ridiculous, and there should be a big push against that. Everybody should be pushing against that and focus on it. But other than that, like I said, the majority of the people really that I've seen have a problem with it are people that have had too many DUIs or they're drug users or too many tickets that they don't pay. You know what I mean? They don't stand in honor, and they yell and scream that the driver's license was taken away from them. And that's the majority of what I've seen. I don't see a problem with getting it. I do see a problem with getting it if you're doing it in the name of that state-created organization. I'd say you do it in the name of your own organization.
Okay, so if I'm
And
going to be
that
creating
is where I've
contract-
noticed a difference.
Yeah, I know
I
how to
see.
do that, Chad. Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Brian.
All right, Chad, Liam, thanks, guys. Everybody be blessed. And like I try to always remind people, too, remember who you are, where you're really from, where you're at. It makes a big difference. Most people have forgotten those things. Good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night.